So today with me I have Ian Donovan. Ian is out of our Portland office and he's a software account manager and thrives on finding solutions for our customers and is very passionate about our customer success. So Ian's going to talk just for a couple of minutes about what's coming up and what's new in the world of Autodesk. And then he'll be passing things over to Curt Egli, who is our Senior Application Specialist, specializing on the building side, which is why he's here talking about Revit today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Ian.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to see quite a few recognizable faces on the webinar today, as well as some new ones. So I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited for this. So thank you guys again. One thing that I wanted to touch base with everyone on that's on this webinar is, you guys probably heard quite a bit about this, but maybe it is new news for some of you, is that the last chance to buy Autodesk perpetual licenses is July 31st, 2016. So with that being said, that is referring to all suites, so Building Design Suite Standard, Building Design Suite Premium, and Building Design Suite Ultimate. So I would encourage all of you to talk amongst yourselves within your firms and get together with your PPI account manager and discuss if there is a need for the future to add additional perpetual licenses, and just have a clear understanding of where things are going and if it's going to make business sense to whether stock up on those licenses or if you guys are well prepared going forward for desktop subscription. Now, something that is brand new that was actually announced just recently by Autodesk is what they're coming out with called the AEC Collection, which stands for Architecture, Engineering, and Construction Collection. So this is what's going to be available to you as customers after July 31st. So starting August 1st, 2016, you guys will have the ability to purchase this AEC Collection. As you can see on the slide here, some of the core products that it includes is Revit, AutoCAD, Civil 3D, but also includes at the bottom there Navisworks Manage, AutoCAD Architecture, MEP, Plant 3D, vehicle tracking, 3ds Max, and a lot of the cloud services that Autodesk has been promoting and putting a lot of focus on, which includes Format 360 Pro, InfoWorks 360, Insight 360, Recap 360 Pro, Structural Analysis for Revit, amongst others. So again, guys, this is brand new. This is what's going to be available to you starting August 1st, 2016. With that being said, this also leads me to another point, which that the building design suites that you guys are probably accustomed to, Building Design Suite Standard, Premium, and Ultimate, will be discontinued. So that means that the only way for you guys to obtain products such as the ones on this slide are either buying them individually as a product, so Revit by itself, AutoCAD by itself, Navisworks Manage by itself, or if you want to have more than those products individually, you can get this AEC Collection. If you're curious about what the cost is for this collection, please contact your account manager that you've been working with here at PPI, and they can certainly get you those costs and the answers to those questions. So again, contact your account manager at PPI and they will inform you what this cost is looking like for both single user as well as multi-user when that is available. Now let's go ahead and get to what you guys are all here for. So what is new in Autodesk Revit 2017? So as you guys can see, for each discipline, architecture, structural engineering, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, there has been quite a few features and enhancements that Autodesk has made with this new version of Revit. Some of the ones that we feel are the strongest, both Curt and myself, just based on previous conversations and interactions with our customers, is on the architectural side, there's depth queuing, global parameter enhancements, as well as a text editor and layout engine. I know that a lot of you that I see on this webinar have asked about a text editor, and know that that's been something that Autodesk has been missing for quite some time, and now they have come out with it for Revit 2017. On the structural side, there's reinforcement connectors, structural connectivity, and steel connections for Revit. So quite a few good things that they've come out with on the structural side. And then on the MEP side, there's design to fabrication, hanger improvements, and creating an MEP model within Revit with fabrication components. So Autodesk has really made an effort to have the connectability between Revit and fabrication and increasing the workflow between those two. And now, without any further ado, let me transfer this over to Curt Egli, who again is our Senior Application Specialist on the building side here at PPI, and he's going to be going through a lot of the things that we just showed you with the new enhancements and features of Revit 2017. Here you go, Curt.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate everybody joining us today and giving me the opportunity to show you a little bit of this. I want you to know that obviously we won't be able to show everything that's going on, and there's something in there for everybody. When you were looking over that slide from Ian, and some of those are multidisciplinary in nature that'll go across all disciplines. The performance that has been improved. Another one I wanted to show, which I think is maybe a little harder to, it's easier to show than it is to talk about it, is calculations within tags, for example. So you can set up formulas and have it look at your rooms, spaces, flow, whatever, and then show up as a calculation inside the tag on your construction documents. The improvements across schedules, those sort of things as well. I thought maybe the best way to do this is to do some live demonstration, obviously a bunch of PowerPoint. I mean, what kind of a webinar would it be without a lot of PowerPoint? But the other thing I thought I would include here and there, just some short video clips too, either from Autodesk or myself, that in 90 seconds could tell the story a little bit better for you. So I'm going to be doing that. It will feel kind of one-sided, I know, for at least a couple of different disciplines, and that's structural and for fabrication, both pipe and duct, at least in my opinion anyway. Besides the multidiscipline in nature, obviously Autodesk threw a lot of bodies at the fabrication and at structural as well. So here I'll kind of highlight some of those so you can get a better sense for that. So what they've been doing is, at least in the Autodesk slides, they talk about architecture and platform, kind of monging them together. The first one that I wanted to show is probably more closely aimed at architects for depth queuing here. We get something kind of similar to that out of the MEP realm and structure, where by default it will change the objects in the background to be half-toned and underlay them. And this one here is a little bit subtle when you're taking a look at it. You can see that building in the background. It's really not supposed to be the building that is the focus of this construction document or this presentation. Instead, it's about the building in the foreground. And so we've got around it in a couple of ways in the past by picking on elements and then telling that one element to be halftone in that view. I decided to throw in this slide right here because I think this tells the story even better. In photography, we call it aerial perspective, and a little different than an architect would call aerial perspective. But you can see that the hillsides in the background here are hazed, right, the farther it gets away. And in a couple areas here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, try my cursor there, you can see like even that tree right there is a little bit more hazed than the one in front of it. And that's what depth queuing is about. And let me demonstrate that for you here once. Let me flip over to the Revit 2017 screen here. And I know there's a little bit of a lag, so I'll try not to talk too far ahead of what's going on. So let's start in the plan view here, and it's this elevation marker right here. I'm going to pick on it, and you can see that the range of it, it's back down here to the bottom part of my screen right here. So one thing that you'll want, I'll do just a little bit of how-to on a couple of these demonstrations, but mostly I'll try and keep this high level. And you can take a class from me if you want a little later, and I'll teach you how to do these things myself. But the far clipping, instead of no clip, that's not going to work with depth queuing, but clip with line or without line is what we're looking for there. And I get two sliders that I'm going to use here in a minute that run from here down to here. So for example, if you look in this area right here, from the top here to the bottom down here might be considered 100%. So right about here might be 15%. So if I move one of the sliders to 15%, it's going to start cutting into the building in front of me. If I pick another vantage point about here, so that these walls start to fade away differently than the wall here in front that I'm seeing from this angle here. This is about maybe 60% across my screen. Somewhere in there you'll start to see the hazing. Okay, that will happen. So let me go give that a try then. I'm going to go to that north elevation view, and I'm looking at the pool here in the foreground. The pool building is supposed to be the item that is of interest to me as I'm looking at that. And I'm trying to get the hotel to go to the background here. So what I've done in the past probably is pick on this and say, I'd like to override the graphics of these elements and then tell it to be half-toned, you know, something like that. The depth queuing will help us with this. So the new buttons that you're going to find in Revit are down here under graphic display options, and actually shadows will work really well with this as well. So if you want to turn on shadows, you're going to see some of the depth queuing happen with shadows too. Here's the new area for depth queuing. It works in section and elevation. It doesn't work in a plan. That doesn't even make sense there, right? But it does in this sort of a view. For MEP and structure, I was saying earlier that we have some automated behavior out of our templates that we use there. Shift your view over to coordination or architectural in nature, and then this button will work for you in that view as well if you'd like to have pipe and duct in the foreground or structure, that sort of thing, and have something else haze like what we're going to do here. So I'm going to say show depth here once. Let me give you a sense for how this works. So here's the fade start location. This is a percentage. It's not particularly obvious on there. You see, if I move it too far forward, the whole building will disappear because it fades out too fast. So somewhere in there, you know, say about here-ish, now it's starting to go into the background there. And then at the front, if I move this too far as well, then I start picking up the boldness even 39% of the way back, and then it starts picking up on the balconies that are hanging over the top edge. So, you know, somewhere in here might be, let's say about here-ish, might be pretty good. I'll hit apply. And then for the fade limit, maybe I up that just a little bit, like when it finally hits its limit and starts to fade out, how light do I want that to be, or dark do I want that to be? So if I set it up too far, it gets dark. If I set it up at this end, it'll stay a little bit lighter. And what I'm heading for here is, you can see right away that the building in the foreground is jumping right out at us. And in the more subtle ones, like up here, for example, you can see, you should be able to see that on your screen. This surface right here looks a little farther back than this one, which looks a little farther back than that one. So I can adjust that with those sliders. You will note, though, that the annotative objects such as the grid here are not affected by depth queuing, so they will stay bold, which is perhaps what you want in a construction document, but I typed in VH to hide that category. So it's that sort of thing you may just want to shut off if that's what you're after. Okay, so anyway, that's depth queuing here. Let me go back to my slides. Another one, I won't bring up a video because I think that this one is actually pretty obvious. They've improved the railings, for example, now. You can host railings on the top of walls. So if you have a shaped floor, for example, or a shaped roof, you can have the railing follow that. It looks kind of almost like an M.C. Escher sketch here, for example. With this roof going around, it'll follow that. What it allows you to do is take a single sketch of the host, and then that transition that we have between the physical and the design intent is bridged with this new capability. So that you can model it the way that you're intending that the railing be built on the site. I did double check this because I was kind of hoping it was a misprint. I know this is important with the walls and the roofs and floors. It'll make it easier with things throughout the building. I was kind of hoping that they would include topo surfaces in this as well, because with some of my outside applications, I'll want to have a fence or railing follow up the hill, and it still does not do that. I would do that, well, either place now a shaped wall underneath it and have that slightly hidden under the surface, or I would actually, somebody on the internet was showing a really great application in Dynamo to do that, to get that part done. So anyway, yet another enhancement in railings. They did a lot in 2013 with that, with railings. Now they've come back to this. Format 360 converter. So convert SketchUp, RFAs, format files. I included a video in this one because I thought maybe there were some people that are not familiar with what format even is. So let me bring that up here for you. Format is for conceptual modeling. So Format 360, right? This is a service, right? It's not included with Revit. They've just bridged the gap between the two so that this architectural modeling software that you're seeing, this format, where you'd sketch and collaborate and revise early design concepts, the converter will let you take Revit RFAs, a kind of a short list of RFAs, and bring them into format. And then if you've changed things, you can replace all and override as you're bringing them back in. So like, for example, on this park bench, the fidelity there of a 72-inch and a 96-inch type are both included in there. So I wanted you to see a little bit of that. The categories that can be transferred back and forth, if this goes too fast, you can look it up on the internet later, but it's casework, entourage, furniture, furniture systems, parking, site, mass, which that would be a good one. Generic models, that's pretty broad, so that could be across disciplines, and specialty equipment. So it's a little bit of an odd list of what they concentrated on for the conversion, but not too odd because you think about what you might be using format for in a conceptual model. Those kind of categories like entourage and parking and site and so on are all things that you probably would want to include, and now you don't have to remodel them to get them in there. Another one that's included in this presentation that revolves around cloud services as well is Autodesk Insight 360. So this one is one where you're using your Revit model and then you're looking for a guide basically on how you can change your building in order to make it perform better. And I included a video on that one as well so we can make some fast rounds on that. So you're looking at outcome-driven guide to building energy and environment performance, right? You'll pick your geographic location, so you're at least going to want to do that, obviously. And then Revit has an automatic energy analytical model that we'll use to enable Insight 360 to be able to give us results back like this. So we look at a range of potential design outcomes. They have an energy cost range factor built into this to identify key energy performance drivers and compare different design scenarios. So that's a lot of what this is about, trying to make that better performing building. It integrates a variety of simulation engines and workflows, such as Revit energy analysis, which you're maybe familiar with, and lighting analysis as well. There's access to Energy Plus heating and cooling load data, and that's also included in Insight 360. So once again, it's to provide a guide so that you can make better decisions with regard to building energy and environmental performance. So another one that is going to be across multiple disciplines as well here is global parameters. And I thought I would demonstrate that one for you as well. We can associate global parameters with type properties for an element, and with instance or type project parameters as well. And consequently, another way that this, I'm not going to use it here, but keep in mind you can filter a schedule by global parameters if you so desire, to look for ones that are missing in association, for example. Also, you can transfer those global parameters between projects. So let me go ahead and give this here a shot for you here once. Let me close out of this project and open up a different one. Let's go to this one here. So I have a global parameter that's already set up in this one that I thought would be a good example. Down here at this end of the building, I've got two different windows set up here. This one is 4 foot off of the edge of the building there, and this one at the moment is some odd distance here. So if I select on this window and I say, I want it to be 5 foot, that's just a plain dimension that I had driven on that one. Up here at this end, if you look at what I had done here, when I select on it, you'll see a little pencil that shows up next to it that shows that there's a global parameter that's been placed on it. And if you look up here at the top, you'll see the window distance has been defined. And so the way that you set up global parameters, maybe I'll just draw a couple of walls out here once. Like say that I draw a wall here to here, and I draw another wall from here to here, and I draw another wall from there to there. I'm just drawing a few here once. The way that you set up a global parameter, it's this new button that showed up in 2016 R2 about midstream. I can say that I want to create a new one called, here that's new, this is new. I'm going to call this one length, for example. And I'm going to create another one called L2. But this time, instead of just setting these dimensions here, like you saw that the 4 foot revolved back down to this, you can set up formulas around these as well. So, so for example, if I wanted L to be L2 divided by 2, always half that distance. If this one is 8 foot, that one automatically shifts to 4. If this one is 5 foot, that one automatically shifts to 10. And so if I assign those, for example, where I say so if I put it here, this is, okay, so here we go. So say that I put a dimension on this side and a dimension on this side. I'm just making permanent dimensions out here. Maybe I'll do it this way for you. This will go fast. So here's some dimensions. I select on one of these and I say, you know what, I'd like you to be L2, and it goes to 10 foot. This one, I'd like you to have a global parameter on you called L, and it goes to 5 foot. And then in a totally different part of the building, I say you be L2, and you down here be L. Now at any point, if I say, here, let me get in a little closer so you can see this a little better. If I say, you know, this, I really would like you to be 8 foot. Now watch what happens. This one be 8, that one will be 8, this will be 4, this will be 4. And I say okay. Everything shifts. So the way that that can work, oh my gosh, there's just so many different uses for this. I'm going to do the same thing with this window. If I want to keep these two windows equidistant from the edge of the building, I select on this one and I say assign that to the window distance that I had created. Now it's 4 foot, right? And I say, you know, edit that and make that 6 feet and apply it. And, you know, say it's multi-story building like a hotel or something, and those windows on the outside edges are always staying equidistant there, right? Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Okay, so another one that I wanted to talk about, which affects all of us for sure, is improved performance too here. So you know, here's kind of an eye chart, I guess, a bit, but what they've done is they have optimized, Autodesk has optimized more than 100 functions. It happens behind the scenes. You don't particularly see them. It's kind of hard to demonstrate, really. But some of the changes that they've made, many of the operations are multi-threaded capabilities now, which you'll particularly notice on large and complex models. Some of it reported by Autodesk as much as 20%, like you're seeing there in the slides. For working with three-dimensional models, this pretty big one is what they call occlusion culling. They're displaying only the visible elements in a view and not drawing elements that are hidden. So when you're doing orbiting, it might be as much as 4.5 times as fast because it doesn't have to think about the objects that are in the back. Those progressive view updates and the occlusion culling performance, they're happening at the GPU level instead of the CPU level, so that's going to help you as well. A second thing that they made changes to, Autodesk made changes to, is about updating color schemes and associated color fills. So where you're going to see that is on color fills for rooms and spaces and zones, but also for my mechanical and plumbing realm for the duct and the pipe color fills. Those will use multiple CPUs for that as well. And so that'll make it go faster too. I'll just show you where that is at once here. It's underneath your options. You're going to see a new button under graphics. And it's right in this area right here. You'll see draw visible elements only. You can toggle it off if for some reason you don't want that on. And allow navigation during the redraw. So instead of waiting around for your computer on a large complex model that you're orbiting, while it's doing it, you can start doing other operations, which, sweet. Okay. All right, let's come back to this again here once. Another one, I won't take the time to do a rendering, but for those of you that want the marketing material or in your photorealistic renderings, Autodesk now has the only visualization engine in Revit is the Autodesk Ray Tracer. Two different aspects are going to be picked up around that. There's going to be a notable speed increase that you're going to see, which will improve the performance, and then physically based rendering results are going to be more accurate. So we're talking about reflections and the lighting, the subtle lighting enhancements that will happen there. Let me show you a little bit about the text editor here once. Maybe this is another thing that affects everybody. You've been waiting around for this a while. Let me demonstrate this for you here once. I'll close this out. And let me open up this one. So without watching me do a ton of typing here, let me go and take a Word document that I have, General Notes Part 1. So I want to have this text here, TXT or a Word document. I'm just going to do a copy on that and then paste it over here into Revit. So I start up the annotate, go to text, that's a good size, and say that I want it here-ish, and then I'll do a paste. Okay, so now I got a bunch of text in my session here. The controls are very similar that you have right now in the text editor, so you can resize it like what you're seeing here. But if you click on it once more, then you'll see the new capability kick into play. It gets kind of darker instead of blue, and I can say up to here I'd like to have it a numbered list, right? And then the way that this works with the soft returns, do you see how this is numbered down? The way that works is I'm going to be using the Shift Enter here on the ends of these. Let's do this one too. Give me a second on this. Shift Enter, Shift Enter, Shift Enter. Where's the end of my sentence? There, Shift Enter. Okay, now like right in here, for example, I'm saying, ooh, you know what? I'd actually like these to be sub-bullets in here. So let me highlight, say, from these and indent those, and it becomes A, B, C, D, right? E, kind of a thing. Nice, huh? So Shift Enter there, that sort of thing. And then I guess as you'd expect it, you know, up in here, maybe you know, at least would figure that they'd put bold in there, for example, like that. Okay, so say that there's another circumstance. Well, here, let's finish this off too. It's mixed case right now. Let's shift this over to uppercase. Yeah, so you can shift it back and forth between the two with this button right there. Nice. Okay, so to kind of complete this part out, though, over here in this area, let me resize that just a bit. You know, like I have even more notes I wanted to put on here, but I'm going to want another one over here that starts with 12. So I'm going to come to a second document of general notes. So I'm going to take this from here to here and copy, and then I'll start up my text again here in line with that. Here, let's do it about here-ish, and paste, and highlight, and say I want to number it. Wow, that got really long. I should have done a box. Here, I'll get it out here. Come on in. All right, there we go. Now that one starts out as 1, so I click, whoops, cancel. Click on it once again, click again. That starts out with a 1, so I'm going to say that I'd actually like this to increment up to 12. So I'm just hitting this button up at the top to increment it up to 12. And then you do the soft returns, and you do, maybe I'll just do this before leaving it. Change it to uppercase as well. Okay, that's the new text improvements in here as well. So keeping my eye on the time, let's go back to the slides. So schedule improvements, a couple different things here. They now have included view templates as a part of this for multi-use enhancement. This way, if you have multiple schedules, you can keep them all, you know, looking uniform. I appreciate that. Also, if you look down here, I included another schedule property and had clicked on flow, for example, down here, where we can display the minimum values, the maximum values, have it do both minimum and maximum for calculations within columns on this. So I use that. There's calculations with annotative tags. I think what I'll do is I'm going to set this one to the side because it takes me a few minutes to do this, and I'll come back to it if I have time. I want to make sure I don't shortchange some of the others. Two different things going on here. A tag can now use a calculated value, like, so if I get time, I'll show you how I can have it look at a parameter, at a value, like how many people is how many students, for example, is allowed within that room, or is should be allowed within that room. And then as the square footage on the room changes, the tag will keep changing with 23 students, so on and so forth. And the other thing that maybe is an irritant that you're going to probably appreciate with tags is that now that you can pin them. So you can pin them so that if, say you're doing a door tag with a leader off of it, the door moves, but the tag will stay in place and the leader will just shift with it. It's also an irritant in the past when you would go to free end and then the tag would jump to some new location. It doesn't do that anymore. A Dynamo is now integrated into Revit. Before it was an add-on. Now when you do the install, you'll see the Dynamo button is built right in. The idea behind this is to give access to non-programmers and programmers, be able to use nodes that somebody else had created and make it do magical stuff for you. It's pretty interesting if you haven't used it before. I did that in a different presentation a little while ago. So I won't do that. Tangency locks, what we're talking about there, I'll play a short video on that one. For example, this could be on a floor or a roof when you're editing like that. The example that's shows here is in the family editor with the back of this chair. You can lock the tangency between that arc right there with the other two lines that are associated with it. And then it just becomes like clay, right? As you're moving it around, you'll see that it will flex with it and keep that association between the two. So let me get out of that here quick so you can see. So that's what we're looking for there. And that could be across all disciplines as well. For structural engineers, let me drill down a little bit into a discipline here. The connectors, so we're talking about, in this case anyway, rebar connectors once, and let me go quickly to the video here to show it as I talk through it a little bit so you can understand this a little better. Reinforcement connectors are family based, and it's not like a system family. These are fully customizable. They interact with the rebar that they're connected to, and so when you make a change, it'll help you facilitate that change management. So structural engineers, so here you are using schematic connectors to define the requirements. Detailers use them for shop drawings, and manufacturers for full install. You can add the connectors to groups and assemblies and partitions with unique coupler numbering, and you can export them to various formats as well. So anyway, this is an example of something that can improve the level of detail for reinforcement modeling and documentation. And I wanted to point that one out because I think that's good stuff. Okay, variable rebar distribution here. So what we're talking about is defining more accurate reinforcement for non-standard concrete element shapes. And what it'll do is fit the rebar for the non-standard geometry with rebar sets that vary along an inclined face like what you're seeing right there. You can use the multi-rebar annotations, the customizable numbering settings, and consequently more accurate schedules that display those varying lengths. So versatility defines the accurate reinforcement for non-standard shapes in concrete elements. So I wanted to highlight that. In terms of graphical rebar constraint management, they have new what we call in-canvas tools. that will replace the rebar constraints dialog box. I think you'll find that that works better for your workflow. You'll be able to place the rebar more precisely with that constraints manager. And the rebar shapes snap to adjacent standard rebar and constrains them to host faces, which you'll find real helpful on the placement of it as well. So as you move and drag and copy the rebar around, the relationships are maintained. Bent fabric sheet reinforcement. You can sketch the bent sheets to accommodate different shapes, so the concrete hosts, like what we're seeing here in this slide. And then later you can edit them if you have changes, so they can adjust to any of the changes. The idea behind this is to generate accurate and complete detailing and documentation of those structural elements. One that I thought I'd better include a video for is this next one, the structural connectivity here. I didn't think that that necessarily made sense just from this slide. You see the green dot that's out in this area here, for example, so we can have those color coded. You'll see that, but also at where the where the members come together, you see that there's also the green right there as well. So let me play this in motion here for you once, so you can take a look at this as I play the video. It's trying to facilitate the discussions that happen between the engineer, the detailer, the fabricator, when you're going from design to detailing on how to connect this framing elements, you know, beams, columns, bracings, that sort of thing. You can place this structural connection that's new to 2017 and then define those relationships between the elements. There's several parameters which can be used in conjunction with this, with schedules and tags, but then you can also store pictures and link to further documentation like what we're seeing here about the connections. And then on the sheet then they'll show up using colors if you feel like using that to help better note the status of it, you know, like it hasn't been approved or doesn't need to go through approval process yet in the workflow. And if necessary and required, the connection between the framing elements can be extended into detailed steel connections. And I'll be looking at that in just a moment because that actually has been a big improvement as well. I'll go over that within the next slide here. So once again, there's the color coding I was talking about, and this is to help that workflow between design and detailing in the BIM environment. So the steel connections that I was talking about, let me go on to that slide here once. This is to help bridge the gap between advanced steel and where Revit left off with steel connections with making more accurate models. So let me describe that just a little bit. I'll bring up the video as I talk through it here so we still can keep on track here. So with steel connections, you access a variety of these parametric steel connections that enable connecting at a higher level of detail like you're seeing here, right? So, you know, higher LOD, right? It is an application that is built in a design engine based on US and European codes. The idea is to bridge between design and fabrication, and then synchronize between Revit and advanced steel for detailing if you go that direction with it. Now, if you're not familiar with advanced steel, that's a complementary product to Revit. It's not included with Revit. Structural engineers use it to accelerate the design, the steel detailing, the steel fabrication, and steel construction. And then extend that into fabrication. So that's what we're looking at there with that one. I felt like that one was pretty important. A couple that I'd go over just briefly here Column split now allows you to split vertical columns at desired points and then place the connectors within. The steel profile catalogs are new and available across multiple geos. That extends the previous content offering where we can seek so people don't have to seek alternative sources there. The foundations, structural foundations, and footings attached to structural columns so that it doesn't have to go up and down with the level, but can go up and down with the adjustment to the response of the changes in the foundation itself. And then I wanted to move on to MEP design and fabrication here. Two big things happen here for fabrication. One of them is when you do the design, we might call that LOD 200. It's design of intent for pipe and duct and so on. At some point when you get to fabrication, though, we need not like the L shape there above, we need it more like what's below, right, in constructible pieces here. So let me play a video that'll help you see that. I'm kind of excited about this one. This is the ability to convert a design level detail model into construction level detail elements. So when you're doing this, they got the design to fabrication tool, and that will list the related services for duct and pipe elements. And then those will be converted according to the rules that are defined in the fabrication services. So the warnings that'll come up, like actually in this video, we use a chain and convert it over. So I'm just tabbing through and then say now I want to convert that over. If there's anything that breaks, you can see there that it brought up warnings here. Those will help you identify any kind of problems that you have. Like in this case, there's a gap is one of those problems, and then you can fill in the gaps. So if it identifies that there are segments that are longer than their specified standard lengths, those warnings will help you adjust those. If you find places where you need to fill in the gap, if you look off to the right, you see the blue dots over there. These are going through different solutions to say, would you like to use this combination instead of elements? And so it tries to help you through in that kind of a quick iterative process there. So I'm pretty excited about that one. I've been waiting for that for some time, and I think it's finally come of age. I knew Autodesk was heading there. I'll walk through 3 different slides here once, and then I will play a video that goes with this one as well, so you can see it in action. What we're looking at here are the route and fill tools. So say that the first slide that I did a moment ago was about converting design level into fabrication level components. Say that you want to do the modeling yourself at a fabrication level. So with these services that we're bringing up, you need to have one of the Autodesk fabrication products loaded on, like Fabrication CAD MEP, like since it's a shared library, it should work for EST MEP, should work for CAMDuct as well for that, but it's looking for those services there and the components to go with it. So for this, we're looking at different solutions. There's those blue dots again, for example, where you get a level of control over the automation of layout that it's trying to give to us. If you need to cut into, they actually have that option as well, where we drop in a T, for example, between a longer length of duct. For the modeling improvements like this, there's a trim and extend tool, which it works the way you'd expect it to. For connectivity rules, taking into account those. And what you're seeing in the lower right here is if you don't know the dimensions of the fitting, you just know that you want a specific fitting for a particular scenario, you can stretch it up into place. So I think that's a good one too. We have control over the slope controls to change the slope. There's a type selector to swap out fabrication elements for similar parts. And also they've added in out of the box a variety of parameters into this for scheduling and tagging as well. So let me, with hangers, there's multi-tiered trapeze hangers now. You can adjust the rod position on the bearer to coordinate, you know, and avoid other services, for example. We can extend, I don't have this in the video, but cantilevered elements, so you can extend the bearer on these hangers as well, and even place a hanger in free space. So let me play a video for you here. So I'll walk you through it. This is about working in, what you're seeing here is a model at LOD 400 level. So, you know, once again, we bring up a model components out of the fabrication suite. If you hover over the top of like the duct here, for example, you can rotate it around with the space bar. You know, if I want to take a tap, for example, and put it on, I'd use the shift and space bar to get that done. And then, you know, if you're having troubles locking on, they actually have a smart snapping tool that'll increase the size of the snap so that it's easier for it to snap onto the other objects. Ones that are part of the model already, like this fan coil, I think that is, you just slide it up into place and they'll snap up into each other there. So, and then, you know, placing a transition like here, for example. Instead of opening that up in the family editor, they have this tool that'll give you quick feedback on its dimensions. So, like for example, I want to have a flat top. When I hit apply, goes to a flat top, and then so on and so forth. I can start to place straight segments off of that. So mere mortals, you know, that's the idea, without having to do a lot of family editing and or just change a bunch of numbers. You get the visual feedback right away. And pipe is the same kind of way. I did want to highlight just a little bit, though, on the pipe end of it. For example, here, placing an elbow, I select on it and say that I'd like the rotation to be in 30-degree elements, increments. So when I click on 30-degree, every time I click on it, it'll jump around and whatever I told it to be, and then so on and so forth with the pipe. And then lastly here, I wanted to show you some with hangers here too. So on pipe hangers, for example, I'm placing one of those here and maybe again down here. Same thing with the duct hangers as well. You just you select on a duct and say now jump over to that service instead. Now you get the duct hangers and place those. The way that works is with the hanger adjustments that Autodesk gives you, it will adjust to the closest structural element. So like here with the rod links that we're seeing, those are, since there's no structural element, they're going to the specified ITM file specification there for that. But rod links, if it finds floors, roofs, structural framing, beams, trusses, stairs, and slabs, it will extend to those. So just a few more slides here that I wanted to point out with electrical, and I know we're running out of time here, but just hang with me for a few more minutes. For electrical, one of the things I wanted to highlight here was apparent load calculation options, the temperature difference parameter type, and then accounting for pressure drop at tap fitting is functionality in communicating that engineering data. For calculating the electrical loads like these screen captures here, there's two different options. You can either sum it up by true load and reactive load, or the default method is sum the apparent load, and that's a more simplified approach for that. They've included design computation improvements also in Revit 2017. There's a new temperature difference parameter type. You can now compute the delta T more easily using this new unit type parameter, and use that computated value in other computations as well, so you can pass that value off. In order to get more accurate pressure drop calculations on duct networks, we can associate a pressure drop table with duct fitting taps. So when you do this, then Revit computes the pressure drop along the main and the branch at the tap fittings. So you'll find that helpful as well. One last slide I wanted to show you here before I hand it back over to Wendy and Ian is on scalability improvements here. So one of the things that we ran into with marks being generated automatically in an MEP model when people were working in a central model, so multiple people working on the same file at the same time, they get duplicate mark warnings all the time. And so Autodesk has changed that, which will help the performance. But be aware of this. It's no longer assigned automatically. So I don't know, to me that's kind of good news, bad news, but definitely based on feedback that people were getting slammed by that. The pipe system volumes are now computed on secondary processors, so you'll see an improvement in the performance on your design models. By doing that, the volume property systems update without impeding your progress, your editing actions. And then lastly, the display of ducts. Two new ways. Revit now only computes and generates the geometry of duct elements that are in the view. So it doesn't, it eliminates the computations of outside the view. So, and the other thing they did too is when you zoom out, any duct elements that are single pixel wide will be simplified in order to reduce the drawing time. The model still has its fidelity. It's just about getting it to the screen faster. And so with that, I'll shift it back over to Wendy and team.
Great. Thank you, Curt. Lots of information. Unfortunately, because there was so much information, we're not going to have time for a live Q&A, but we'll stick on here for just another 60 seconds or so. We want to be really respectful of everybody's time here on the webinar, and we know everybody's very busy and needs to get back to whatever it was we interrupted it at 10 a.m. So go ahead and shoot those emails. But if you don't get a question off and there's something that pops up in the next day or two or week or month, please do not hesitate to reach out to your PPI account manager. If they can't answer it and it's more technical, they'll get you in touch with our support team. And we're just, really grateful to have you all along on the webinar with us. Ian, Curt, any last minute thoughts?
Thanks, Wendy. I just want to say thank you again, guys, for taking the time to attend this webinar. Just to reiterate what Wendy was saying, please do not hesitate to reach out to your account manager, whether it's myself, Ian Donovan, or if it's someone else, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Chris, I saw your question come in for the pricing on the AEC collection. Myself or your account rep will contact you individually and get you some information on that. And again, thank you guys.
Okay. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Curt. Lots of good information. And until next time, thank you very much and good day.